Generate G code for a 3D printer. After completing this video, you'll be able to post-process an additive setup. In Fusion 360, let's carry on with our CAM additive simulation from the previous video. At this point, we've created all the toolpaths, we've modified the PLA material, and we've simulated it to ensure that all of the settings are correct. At this point, we're now ready to generate the G code, which is the machine-readable code that we can take out to the 3D printer. What we're going to do is make sure our additive toolpath is selected, go to Actions, and select Post-Process. When we select Post-Process, we need to ensure that the machine is properly selected and the post is properly selected. Then we have our program name number and the location it's going to be saved. In most cases, you'll want to make sure that you save this to a local location and then move it over to an SD card to take to the 3D printer. As we move over into the right-hand side, notice that we have a handful of post properties. Inside of here, notice that we've got some things that are disabled by default and that we've got some general settings for things like allow G-code output in inches. There's no bed leveling on this specific machine, and some machines will have automatic leveling, and you'll want to include either a G29 or an M420 for that. And then we can also have things like fade height for compensation. There's some built-in settings here, preserving rapid movement. We've got our high feed rate, a maximum circular radius, and some of the other general values. We're going to leave all of these as default and move over to operations. In this instance, we've only got our additive toolpath. We're going to select Post, and this is going to generate the G code or the machine-readable code that is needed to create our 3D print. When we take a look at the code, we can see a couple of things happen at the very top. It tells us information about the printer that we've selected, the amount of material that's going to be used, the filament diameter, the nozzle size, and values for things like offset. We also see here that we've got a bed temperature of 60 and a max temp of 215 for the extruder. There are values about the overall size of the 3D printer, where the center is, and the number of bodies that are going to be 3D printed. We also have information about the material, the PLA, boat, and tube. So as you begin to create your own materials, you'll be able to see that in the code to ensure that you are using the proper material. The code can sometimes be read on specific 3D printers, but in most cases, you'll only be able to see the file name for this .g code file. As you scroll down, you can see that there are a handful of settings that begin to do the nozzle wipe. This allows us to print that single line going back and forth to ensure that there is material coming out of the extruder, and then it moves into the process of actually going and printing the perimeter of the part, and then carry on actually printing the part. Everything in here looks okay, so I could take this out to the 3D printer and begin 3D printing these 4 parts. But keep in mind that there are a lot of settings that need to be validated and reviewed when you're setting up a 3D print. Once you've used this process and you've set up a couple of materials, the process goes relatively quickly. However, the initial prints will take a little bit of time for you to figure out things like your print speed settings, the temperatures, and some of the other general settings that you need in order to create your 3D prints with the accuracy and tolerance that you desire. If you go into your print settings library and you take a look at the Fusion 360 library, there are some types of materials in here that will be directly from the manufacturer. So make sure that you do search around for different types of materials and you see what is available. Notice here that we have the Ultimaker breakaway boat and tube material. So this, for example, is very specific. We also have the Virtual Foundry bronze direct drive. And as you scroll through these materials, you might find a handful of direct consumer materials already pre-set up for you. But some of the generals like the ABS, the PLA, the PETG, and the TPU materials are going to be generic, and you should look through every setting and ensure that it is correct for your machine. At this point, we're done with our 3D printing, so we're going to go ahead and save this design before we move on.